Hi, welcome to the Instructor Training for Student Success in College, Doing What Works. We're going to focus on how to incorporate research into your first year seminar or student success course. So we'll begin by talking about why are we using research. You probably noticed that this is one of the most unique features of this textbook is the inclusion of peer-reviewed journal articles in every chapter. Well, students really want to make sure that they are, using and discovering strategies that really work. So by giving them research-based strategies versus just advice-based strategies, we're certainly increasing the likelihood that these different techniques that we share with our students will lead to success for them. Another reason why we need to focus on research is that students are expected by their professors to use scholarly sources, but most of the time students are not taught how to read and how to use these sources. I would say many classes are taking students to the library or showing them how to access the information in the database system, but not that many classes are going the next step and teaching them how to actually read and use the articles. So that's where this really becomes quite important. And finally, it's also important to increase the credibility of the course so that students really view this as a real and valid academic course. And also the campus will perceive the course to be much more on par with the other academic courses if it's tackling tougher subjects such as research. When I first started using this approach on my campus, I work at a community college. I was met with quite a bit of resistance from my colleagues who thought that maybe first-year students really couldn't do this. I was asking too much of them in their first semester. But the truth is that students can do it if you provide the right level of support. If I just ask them to do the task and I don't provide them with significant support, then many of my students would really flounder and have trouble with it. But with the right level of support, it really does work. I should mention to you that my college requires this course for students who have 2 or more developmental courses. So that means that I have many students in my classes who are at pretty low reading and writing levels, and this can certainly impact their performance in the class. So despite that, they have really been quite successful using this approach. Again, they're not walking in successful, but they're walking out successful. It's a lot of work, but it's very rewarding to see students make so much growth and really feel much more confident as the semester goes along. So the first part of this approach really involves teaching students about the different sections or elements of a peer-reviewed journal article. So I focus on the different parts. So for instance here, this is the abstract, and many students will just skip right over that. So I want to emphasize the importance of this, part of the article, and how this is just another word for summary, and how it really does give you the background knowledge you need. And then I'd walk through the article showing them the different parts like the introduction, the method, the results, and the discussion. And as I'm doing that, I'll tell them what the purpose of each section is. So I'm simplifying it for them to really be able to answer these questions. This is my expectation of the first year seminar students, that they can answer these questions about the research articles that they're reading. One of the other things we need to do is help students realize you don't have to start reading an article on page 1 and just go, sequentially through. That actually most of us as professionals bounce around articles quite a bit, and that can be pretty helpful for them in building a little bit more background knowledge to understand the more complex parts of the article. So emphasizing to them that they want to read the abstract several times before they do anything else is really critically important. Follow that by reading the introduction section, where this is setting the stage for the article, why they're doing the research, what other research has been done, and really what their research question is. Then we skip over the method and the results, I tell them, and jump right into the discussion, where again the language will be a little bit simpler. After they've had a chance to read all of these sections, now they should go back to the beginning and read the entire article, because it'll be easier for them to tackle the method and the results, which are obviously the most challenging parts of the research article. So here's how the approach works. I start off with a no-stakes kind of assignment, which basically means it's not graded. So I ask students to read an article in the text. I'll assign a chapter, ask them to read the article, come to class having read it, and then I'm going to go over it or break it down during class. And I'll use PowerPoint slides, and I may point to parts of the article itself also. We may use that as well. And I'm really kind of explaining the study in pretty simple terms. I'm not really getting into the statistics and the research methods. I'm really just giving them that basic overview of the research study. Once they start to get the hang of that, then we move into what I'm calling low stakes kinds of approaches and assignments. In this area, now students will have to read another article, again, one provided in the text, so we're having a shared experience, but this time they'll have to complete the Exploring the Research and Summary worksheet. So in your text, there's an example in every chapter, actually. It's called Exploring the Research and Summary, and there are different ones for different articles, and there's also a blank form as well. And I want them to be able to do that for the main articles in the chapter. Then they should bring in that to research summary. And what we do is we engage in a peer review process. So I'll have them anonymously exchange papers, and then I'll have different teams engage in peer-reviewed feedback. Now, most of the time when you do peer-reviewed feedback, students may struggle quite a bit at providing their classmates with valuable feedback because they too aren't quite understanding the task fully. So instead of just doing a generic peer feedback process, this review teams kind of approach really does work better. What I'll do is I'll divide them into different teams. So say team A might be where they're looking at maybe key points, and they're supposed to underline what they think the main point of that section was. So they're just kind of looking for main point. There might be another one that might be the citation police, where citations used appropriately. There might be another team that's looking at thoroughness or level of detail, So you can really kind of divide the class into whatever teams you want. Maybe you want a team that's only looking at the research question. Maybe another team that's only looking at the method. Whatever it is, you want to make sure you train them on how to do that. And then those papers are anonymously rotated through the different teams so that when they go back, when they get the paper back, they're getting 3 or however many teams you had, different types of feedback on their paper. It makes it a lot easier for the students to engage in that feedback process, and the feedback that they receive is much more meaningful. After doing that, then I allow them to revise and resubmit their work. So I'm actually not grading the product until after they engage in the peer review process. The next step is for the professor to review the study. So because we had a shared article, we can all work together and walk through the different elements of the article. And again, I'll use the PowerPoint slides as a backdrop for that conversation to just make sure that everyone did fully understand the content of the article. As they get better at being able to read and extract key findings from the articles, now it's time to step it up a notch. And I will engage in more higher stakes kinds of assignments where they are going to have to go into the library databases and find their own articles. They will then have to do either a paper and or presentation on the articles that they choose. So these are more the traditional papers that we would see in college, but we're not starting there. These are things that they would do at the end of the semester. So I just want to share a couple of different teaching tips for using the research and getting students engaged in the, in this new approach to the class. First of all, having them predict the results. Students love this. So if you ask them to guess the results of a study before you actually give them the results, they're often more attentive and engaged in the conversation that follows, or more likely to read the article if you send them off to do that. The other approach that I often use, especially in the beginning of the semester, is the abstract only. And I tell them, I want you to just look at the abstract and extract as much information as you can about the nature of the study. And then I'll have them say, work with a partner and dive into the actual article to get more details. So maybe the abstract said undergraduate students. So I might say, well, how many students? And I'll ask them questions like, were they first-year students? What do we know about the type of student they were? And then they'll have to say, that information comes from the method, so let me go find it. And so we kind of use the abstract as a springboard to, use the rest of the article as a resource to gather more details about it. The jigsaw classroom exercise, I'm sure many of you are familiar with, is another great way, just a very interactive way to get students engaged with the article. And you could have, a variety of different ways you're breaking it up. One way would be to have one group work on the introduction part of the article, another group methods, another group results, another group discussion. You certainly would have to make sure they all read the abstract at least so that they had the general context for their piece of the study. But the Jigsaw Classroom really works where you have experts working together and going back to their home-based group where they have to then teach their classmates about their section of the article. And that can be a pretty powerful way to get them engaged with the research as well. A couple of assignment ideas. I already mentioned to you that I asked my students to fill out the Exploring the Research and Summary worksheet. I think it's a great beginning, but then you may want to have that shift as the semester goes on into something more significant, like a paper or a presentation. And of course, you can do some more creative kinds of assignments as well, such as a social media campaign. Perhaps you have them create a video that kind of highlights the key findings of the study and how the study was done. The idea behind the research is really that it provides you with kind of a mechanism for integrating reading, critical thinking, and information literacy skills. As you'll notice in each chapter, it's packaged with some reading questions before it begins, and then afterwards, students are asked some critical thinking and information literacy type questions and prompts to really get them to dive a little bit deeper into it. So these are the kinds of questions that you could ask your students to consider as they're reading the article. And then after the article, you can ask these more general questions. And as I said before, each article also comes with some more specific questions that are a little more catered to the article itself. And then finally, the information literacy. There's question prompts there that will ask them to go and research either a related topic or see if there's additional research available on this topic. Try to find out and discover whether or not this finding is consistent across multiple studies. And I think that these different strategies really help them develop higher level skills that they're going to need in college. So as a result of using research, you're really setting your students up to have higher levels of knowledge and skills and self-efficacy and really be able to tackle the high-level tasks they're going to need to do in college. So I hope this was helpful to you, and I wish you all the best as you challenge your students, raising the bar, but also raising the support.